Hello and welcome back for another timeless video. Today we're going to be taking a look at this Thassa's Oracle Tainted Pact deck. The premise of the deck is to use Tainted Pact, which lets us exile the top card of our library, and then we can choose to put it in our hand unless it has the same name as another card exiled this way. Then we can repeat this process until we either put a card in our hand or we exile two cards with the same name, whichever comes first. The catch is, we're not playing any cards with duplicate names, so this essentially is a demonic tutor that will allow us to mill our library at will, and that in combination with Thassa's Oracle means that we'll win the game, as Thassa's Oracle states that when it enters, we get to look at the top X cards of our library, where X is our devotion to blue. We can put one of them on top of our library and the rest on the bottom, and then if X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in our library, we win the game. So at face value, when we cast Thassa's Oracle, our devotion is going to be at least 2, meaning if there are 2 less cards in our library, we're going to win the game. However, usually we want to mill everything out so that we have 0 cards. That way, if our opponent is able to remove Thassa's Oracle at instant speed, we'll still win the game. I'm not going to go through every card individually in the list. I have them broken out by category. Over on the left here, we have our card draw cards and our cantrip type effects to try and dig for our combo pieces. The next column are all ways that we can tutor for our combo pieces or for some interaction to protect our combo. Then we have a handful of various counter spells that we're running. One that I want to call out specifically is Force of Negation, as this is only able to protect our spells on our opponent's turn. It's really in here to try and slow down some of the fast combo decks that are in the format at the moment. In the fourth column, we have a few discard spells, also good against the combo decks. And then the fifth column has some more generic spells in it. Leyline of the Void to counter all of the graveyard strategies in the format. Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, acts as a redundant Thassa's Oracle effect, stating that if we would draw a card while we have no cards in our library, we win the game. Sink into Stupor and MDFC that we can use to bounce a spell, a permanent that's already resolved, or play it as a land. Narset also helps us dig for cards and can shut down opponents' card draw abilities. And Cling to Dust as a little bit more graveyard hate that can also cantrip. In the sixth column, we have a few removal spells, and then we have a handful of lands. The seventh column here are all dual lands and the Chrome Mox for a little bit faster mana. And then in the last column, we have our basic lands, as well as all of our fetch lands. For the sideboard, we're running a redundant copy of Thassa's Oracle, Jace Wielders of Mysteries, and Tainted Pact. In case our initial sends get countered or our opponent uses discard, we can always grab one out of the sideboard with some of our tutor effects. And then the rest of the cards here are redundant graveyard hate, creature removal, discard, and protection spells, as well as an additional land if we feel that tutoring a land is most beneficial. This deck has seen success in Timeless before, and it has also seen great success in Historic, so much so that Thassa's Oracle was banned. So we're hoping today that we are able to put up a strong showing. Before we jump into the gameplay, I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe to the video. It really helps the channel. And without further ado, let's jump into the games. Unfortunately, during editing, I realized the audio for a few of these games did not record correctly, and so I will be going back and redubbing my thought process and why some of the decisions were made for the games that had problems. So we kept the hand here. We had some card selection with Gaze, and on turn 2 we could hold up Mana Drain, which can help us ramp out some of our other spells. Opponent on a mulligan, we played out our island. And then Urborg from our opponent gave us the opportunity to gaze here. And then we kept the cantrip and got rid of the lands since we already have quite a few in hand. Opponent played out an Ancient Tomb and passed the turn back, allowing us to flash back the gaze. And then here we kept the Thoughtseize so that we could check our opponent's hand. We were going to fetch and then realized with Urborg we can actually cast the Thoughtseize without doing so. And so we used the island. This allowed us to hold up our fetch land if we wanted to go grab a Surveil. Opponent flashed in a Bowmaster here, which punishes our cantrips, but we held on to our counterspell since there could be better targets. Our opponent's hand was pretty bad, so we went with the Reanimate here for the discard. And then played out the Wishclaw Talisman while we had the opportunity. Opponent attacked in for 2, played out their Chromox, and then their top deck Baragoyf. So now we were under a bit of a clock. We used the Ponder. Going to take another ping from the Bowmaster. And then we decided to shuffle. Drew into the Grim Tutor anyway. Pass the turn back to our opponent. They attacked in, milled over some cards, and found a Grief. Opponent sat on this Grief for quite a while before finally deciding to pitch cast it instead of hard casting it. In order to protect our combo, we used the Mana Drain, which would give us 4 mana next turn. And they played out another Baragoyf, so they were presenting lethal here. We started off with the Talisman, using one of the generic mana, and we used that to go grab our Thassa's Oracle. Then we could play out the Oracle, holding full control. Once the trigger went on the stack, we cast Tainted Pact. And even if our opponent removes Oracle here, we could just mill through our entire library. And once we had no cards in the library, when Thassa's Oracle's trigger resolves, we were able to win the game. Right, in this game, we decided to keep our hand since it had a Force of Negation for early interaction, as well as good creature removal. Opponent played out a Phantasmal Image, indicated they are on a control deck. So we had to be patient this game and not overextend into our opponent's counter magic. We took the hit here before trying to Fatal Push, see if they play out anything better. And our opponent just let it go. Next turn, we just hit our land drop and passed it back. Opponent also hit their land drop. We hit our third land, sent it back again. And here they played out a Surveil. At this time, we didn't know if they were on Dimir or if they were just using the Undercity Soars as a way to have better selection. But the Baleful Strix gave it away. We had the option to counter using Mana Drain, and we decided to let it resolve, as we could use the Mana Drain to fight over our combo or something more impactful, and the clock from Baleful Strix is not that significant. Drew into a Pact Negation, which is fantastic in this matchup, but it did force us to use Brainstorm to try and hit our next land drop. Unfortunately, we didn't find one here, so we were going to be Brainstorm locked. We cast the Shimmer of Possibility to clear the Brainstorm cards, and our opponent fortunately let this resolve. Otherwise, they probably would have won this game. We were able to find our fourth land and pass it back to our opponent. And they shocked in, indicating that they have quite a bit of interaction in their hand. We ran out Demonic Tutor as a attempt to draw out some counter magic. Opponent let it resolve, which let us go get our Tainted Pact. The Force of Negation can be used on our opponent's turn, so our plan was to Pact on their turn and then use the Force as backup. And then on the following turn, we could play the Oracle with Pact of Negation. But the Thoughtseize here from our opponent changed our plans. And we decided to go with Mana Drain as our counter of choice. Again, we had a feeling our opponent has more interaction in their hand, and so we were really trying to use this Force of Negation to draw it out, but our opponent just let the Thoughtseize get countered. Here they stifled one of our lands, trying to slow us down a bit. And we drew into another Tutor effect. We were doing a bit of math here in our head, seeing how much mana we had and whether it made sense to play the Tutor. We decided to go for it, and our opponent let this resolve as well. Looking at what we had as options, we chose to go with Duress, take a look at our opponent's hand, and build a game plan for how we're going to get our cards to resolve. Opponent let this resolve as well, and we saw that they had a Stifle, which could be used on the Thassa's Oracle trigger, a Force of Negation, and a Flare of Denial. We opted to go with the Flare since it's the most versatile counter spell. We could always use Pact on their turn to get around Force of Negation, and then we just had to answer the Stifle. Drew into a Synchronous Stupor and decided to use the Treasure Cruise, another good counter target. Opponent quickly snapped off the Force of Negation, so now they only had the Stifle in hand. And with the Pact of Negation, we felt that we could deal with the Stifle and just had to hope that their top deck wasn't another counter. We played out the Thassa's Oracle, and then with the trigger on the stack, the Tainted Pact, and our opponent just conceded. They didn't even try to stifle the Thassa Oracle's ability. And we got the victory. This hand is okay against fair decks. Not the best against combo. We'll give it a try. Opponent doesn't have a companion revealed. And then here, I think we just play out our fetch land and pass. Don't know what we want to imprint to the Chromox yet. And it does look like we're up against combo. They'll take our Wish Claw most likely here. They have Reanimate, they'll take the Chromox and the Wish Claw probably. Take the Deluge instead. So they're going to Reanimate or Scam. And then maybe look to use the Fatal Push. We'll fetch up and we'll shock this in. Dual land, I think we want the colors. Then Fatal Push the Grief. Opponent is left with a choice between the Chromox and the Talisman. Lost the audio again on the recording, so we'll be going to summarize the rest of this game. Opponent followed up with a Necrodominance, which explains why they were okay with burning through so many resources in the early game, and then they restocked their hand here. See what they discard, try and formulate a game plan, and then just play out our land. Then opponent has the Dark Ritual into Surin here. And then they play out the Saint Alinda. Puts us under some real pressure. And then the reanimation means that they're going to take our Chromox and we're really going to be out of options. We decided to keep this opening hand. It had some early graveyard hate and some cantrips. Opponent started out on a Raucous Theater. We guessed that this might be some form of reanimation strategy. So we shocked in our Watery Grave to hold up Cling to Dust, and we were also holding up Gaze as well. Opponent fetched for a second Theater here. Kept the card on top and then passed back. So we used the Otherworldly Gaze during their end step. Weren't really a fan of the Maze Mind Tome, and the rest of the cards seemed slow as well, so we moved them all to the graveyard and decided to take a fresh, clean draw. Played out the Scalding Tarn and passed. Again, we wanted to hold up the Cling to Dust in case our opponent was a Reanimator. Here they played a Faithless Looting. Discarded a Thassa and one other card, a land. Then they used Dark Ritual. And they tried Necromancy on a Thassa, which we used to Cling to Dust on. From here, we used our Surveil land. Didn't need another land card, so we put it in the graveyard and then top deck Narset, which was a great draw because it allows us to turn off our opponent's Faithless Looting, which was face up in their graveyard. And then we found a Force of Negation off the Narset's ability, adding another layer of defense. Our opponent used a Demonic Tutor here, and we decided to let it resolve instead of countering it. And we did note that our opponent might grab something like a Grief. They grab the Thoughtseize instead, and instead of 2-for-1ing ourselves, we just let them take the force. Drawing into Fae of Wishes. We use the Narset first for more information. Grab the Tainted Pact. And then we bolted ourselves so that we could use the Fae of Wishes ability, grabbing additional graveyard hate from our sideboard. We played out the Crypt, and then that was enough to prompt a concession from our opponent here. So we managed to take down the Rakdos Reanimator. This hand is good, we'll keep. Presents a turn 3 win attempt if we want to. Opponent starts on a Goyf. They could have Strip Mine in their deck. Things like discard as well. Start on a Sewers, and we'll keep the other land. Amped Raptor into another Amped Raptor. That's fine. At the moment, it's not fast enough to stop us. Then here, don't think playing out the Delta necessarily helps us any. If our opponent's going to Strip Mine us, they can just go for the Sewers. We want to try and avoid using Mana Drain if we can. Opponent hits for 5. They know about the Mana Drain, so they might not play anything here. And that should let us attempt to win here. I don't think Black, Green, Red has anything that can stop us. Definitely not a Bowmaster. So again, we just need to mill until we have 1 card in the library, draw it for turn, and then we'll win the game. And our opponent concedes, saves us a couple clicks. Good game. Against a Urian deck. Not many of those in Timeless, so I don't know exactly what they're playing. We'll keep it. We have Graveyard Hate, some discard, and technically Jace is 1/2 of our combo. Start with the Leyline in play. And then go select our opponent. It's going to be oops all spells, and they just concede here. Good game. This hand is very fair. Don't think it's going to do. No mulligan. This is a bit better. We can keep. And then what do we want to get rid of? It's between Thought Erasure, Shimmer of Possibilities, and Solve the Equation. Probably Thought Erasure. If we are able to Mana Drain something, then we can cast our Solve the Equation quite cheaply. So play out the Dark Slick Shores, pass the turn. 2 swamps from our opponent. Here we'll play out the Starting Town and pass. See if our opponent has a Bowmasters. They do not. Another swamp. No need to get impatient here. Scalding Tarn is also good. We can surveil. And an Ancient Tomb. So now we can start seeing things like Shieldred or the One Ring. Or Barragoyf. I think we'll counter that. We could use the mana next turn. Would love to see a Thassa's Oracle on top of the deck here. Just the Polluted Delta. Do we want that? We have a sink in hand already. I think we'll dig. With the mana here, we can use Shimmer first. And don't know if we really want any of these. We take the Mastermind. We can go grab our card from the graveyard. Swamp doesn't let us hold up Counterspell. And while Jace is technically a win condition, our opponent hasn't used any removal yet. So maybe it's Supreme Will. Very tough decision. I think that we're going to go for the land here. And then we can solve the equation, go get our Tainted Pact. Next turn, if we play out a land, we'll be able to use the Pact of Negation in an emergency and still pay for it. Chalice on 2. That is going to be almost impossible to win through. Do we have anything that can prevent our spells from being countered? I don't think so. So we just have to let that resolve. We'll have to bounce it using the Sink into Stupor when we're ready to combo off. We'll brainstorm, looking for lands now. Can get rid of Demonic Tutor. Pretty close to using Dig Through Time. So put the Cling to Dust back as well. Play out the Verge. Then we'll duress our opponent, see what they're going on. Definitely take the Demonic Tutor. It's a dead card. Another mistake. Have to tighten up. They play out the Baraglyph. And they're going to play out Shieldred here. So we'll Dig Through Time. Need to exile 5 cards here. And then what do we take? These are all pretty bad. Take a land. Do we want 2 lands? Still need to find our combo. So maybe Supreme Will. Force of Negation a little bit slow here. And we'll pass the turn. Just need to dodge discard. Take 7 down to 9. And our opponent gets a Bowmaster. Is this a draw effect? Nope. So that would get around Bowmaster anyway. And it looks like our opponent has more action here. I think we need to pack this. And we'll pitch the Pact of Negation. Supreme Will. Try and find our Thassa's Oracle. We do not. Fae of Wishes. It's going to be a bit too slow. So I think we need to take the Ponder. And then in the end step here, we'll bounce the Chalice. Take our draw step. That's not going to help us. Ponder. There's the Oracle. Make sure we don't shuffle. And then play out the Oracle, hold full control. With the Oracle trigger on the stack. Play out the Tainted Pact. And this should do it. Good game. Alright, so there you have the deck, and it did pretty well today in Timeless. We were able to put up a turn 3 victory, as well as play out some longer, grindier matches using the control aspect of the deck. Obviously, as a singleton deck, there are a lot of choices you can use for your interaction, whereas certain cards I feel are mandatory, such as your 1-mana discard spells and some of your counter magic. There's also a lot of flexibility with which cantrips you put in the deck and other interaction. Some cards that I'm on the fence about: Fae of Wishes, Maze Mind Tome, Grim Tutor, and Mastermind's Acquisition. While they all have their strengths, they might be a bit too slow for the Timeless format. Notably, Fae of Wishes and Mastermind's Acquisition do allow us to use the sideboard, which we did delve into in one of the matches today. So you really need to evaluate whether or not you're running into a lot of longer, grindier matches where using these sideboard cards is advantageous, or if you think the deck can function better if you cut them and put more interaction in. The Maze Mind Tome, again, seems a bit too slow. You have to dump 2 initial mana into it, which will just allow you to scry, and then you would need to dump additional mana in order to draw additional cards. And the Grim Tutor at 3 mana means that you would either need to tap out of interaction or wait until later in the game to be able to utilize it. Overall, I was happy with how the deck performed and how versatile the combo was once we put together the pieces. Similar to Historic, once you cast the Thassa's Oracle and the Tainted Pact, it is very difficult to interact with, and there's only a handful of answers in the entire format. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more content.